Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 4 of the CDL podcast. This episode is going to be a little bit shorter because it's getting out a little bit later in the week, and the tournament starts tomorrow as this is being recorded on Thursday, and there's really not a whole lot to talk about since the last one that we did. There aren't a lot of new news stories or anything in the community as it's only been a weekend with online. I feel like there's a little bit less in terms of the roster drama because people can't see each other in person and talk about things and see each other at events and stuff. So I feel like word gets around maybe a little slower through text instead of word of mouth. So this is going to be just a little shorter one, getting into my predictions for CDL Chicago, the homestand there. And yeah, this one will be probably only like 20 to 30 minutes, and we'll just go over our predictions and maybe hear what you guys have to predict. But I want to start out by addressing some Warzone news. I mean, this is a little bit old news by the time this is getting out, but they did address the cheaters a little more finally, which has been a rampant problem, especially on PC Warzone. And I thought it was extremely funny that they basically said they're like most games, they're going to put in like a option to be able to report people. Like if you see somebody that has an aimbot or something and kills you in lobby, you can report them for cheating, obviously, and then I think you have to give like some sort of feedback as to what they did if they had like wall hacks, aimbots, whatever it may be. But then they also said instead of banning everybody, since they don't have an anti-cheat, they have to like manually ban everyone, which with all the cheaters I'm sure is almost impossible to do efficiently. They said they're having cheater v cheater lobbies, which I thought was hilarious, and the community kind of went in on that. So I just want to touch on that and say that I thought that was really funny to see, because instead of actually just developing an anti-cheat where they could ban everyone, they're putting their time into making cheater v cheater lobbies. So if you're unfortunate enough to randomly get stuck in one of those lobbies and you're not a cheater, you might get in a lobby with 148 other people or something that are all using aimbots, and you're going to be insta-ripped off spawn. I just thought that was really weird that they decided to put their time into dedicating cheater v cheater lobbies over just simply putting in an anti-cheat or attempting to fix it in some way. They're just going to let them all still play the game but play against each other. That kind of made no sense to me. But moving on from Warzone, because I don't really want to get into that too much, I want to stick with the CDL. We're going to get into some predictions and just talk about those quick. And the groups are really interesting for the Chicago home series. I feel that Group A is absolutely stacked, especially if New York is as improved as I heard Crowder saying they were, or Replay saying they were, and a lot of other people saying they are, with Mac Melts. And then Group B would be absolutely horrible if OGLA didn't show us improvement last time we saw them, because that group has a lot of pretty bad teams in it. So this time around, we're actually going to start with Group B, because why not? It's the easier one to predict, in my opinion. So we're just going to get that one over with right away. And looking at the first matchup there, it is the Seattle Surge versus the LA Gorillas. I think they played in the first round at the last tournament too, if I'm not mistaken, the Dallas homestand. I think they might have played there, but I can't really remember. For those two are playing in the first round, and I think I'm going to have to go with the Seattle Surge in that one. The LA Gorillas have shown me nothing in terms of the fact that I think they could win series. I think that they have a lot of good online players, which scares me because the league is now online, as you all obviously know. And Blast has always been known as a really good online player. And I know Vivid and Spark be young guys. Usually the young guys are always known as onliners. So they do kind of scare me from that sense. But to me, I look at this weekend as a do or die weekend for Seattle. I mean, if they come out and lay an egg and lose 2 matches in a row, a roster change literally has to happen at this point. Like I heard Maven saying on the Heartpoints podcast, at this point they're like getting into the territory of maybe the most disappointing roster in COD history, which is kind of bold, but it's got some merit because, I mean, the likes of their team, they got a 3-time world champ in Karma, a 2-time world champ in Apathy, and other solid players. I mean, Octane is probably widely regarded as the best AR over the last 3-4 years. I mean, their team is absolutely stacked with big names. Slack is another veteran that's a great player. And obviously Enable was, but Pander isn't like some decorated player, but he's been a solid player over the last 3 or 4 years, mostly in the AM bracket. And if they don't pick it up this weekend, they're going to have to, Octane's going to force his way out to some other team, or he's going to drop everyone pretty much, I think. So I'm going to say that they're going to win. I think they're actually going to come out and finally win a search, because I think that their coach is going to go absolutely in and try to fix their search, because it has to be fixed. So I think they're actually going to 3-0 the LA Gorillas in this matchup somehow. And I won't be surprised if Seattle got 3-0, just because knowing them, they'll find a way to blow the search. And if they end up dropping that first hard point, I think if they get down 2-0, there's no way they're winning that third map. but I'm going to go with them 3-0, but I don't feel all that confident in that pick. And the other first match in Group B is Dallas Empire and LA Optic, OGLA. This is kind of a tough match for me to predict because I've been pretty high on OGLA for a while, but I think most of their players are actually based in LA. And then I think Dashi is back home in Toronto as long as he's playing. As long as he didn't get benched for Chino, I don't really think we've ever gotten like confirmation or news on that. But I really want to pick OGLA here, but I feel like their connection might not be the best because California, I think, is not too close to any of the dedicated servers, and then Dashi being in Toronto, that's kind of far, so they might have connection issues. If this was on LAN, I think I would pick OGLA, but Dallas also has great connection and is known for their two online players, Shotzi and Illy, so I'm going to take Dallas in this matchup, but I think it might be like a 3-2, and I would not be shocked at all if Optic is able to pull this out, because if this was on LAN, I would pick Optic. I think they were on the uptick at their last event, and then things kind of got slowed down by everything getting canceled. And as long as they can keep that momentum going and they don't let online play get in their heads or affect them too much, I think they're going to continue to improve and be a really good team. And I think they would take out Dallas if we were actually in Chicago this weekend and not online. But I'm going to go with the Dallas Empire in like a 3-1, 3-2 fashion. I think it'll actually be a good series. So then the knockout match number 1 in Group B would be the LA Gorillas versus OGLA, the Battle of LA. And I think this one will be really easy. I think most players in that matchup, once again, are located in LA, so hopefully connection won't be too big of an issue in that. And I think OGLA is going to mop the floor with the LA Gorillas. I think that'll be another 3-0. I don't know if the Gorillas win a map this weekend. If they do, it'll probably be that search against Seattle. And now watch, I say this, and they'll shock the world, and they'll get out of their group, because their group is definitely a group that any of the 4 teams could get out of. If LA starts hot, the Gorillas start hot, and are able to beat Surge, they could easily make it out, because this is definitely the weaker group. But I'm going to pick OGLA to 3-0 them. I think, like I said, OGLA could beat Dallas, who's viewed as a top 3 team right now. So I think they're going to handle the Gorillas pretty easily, move on 3-0, 3-1 into knockout match 2. So then in the first qualifier match, in the winner's side of that group, it's the Dallas Empire versus Seattle Surge. I really want to pick the Surge just to be different, because, I mean, they need the win way worse than Dallas does. Dallas has been pretty successful, almost making every final this year. But I'm going to go with Dallas and say that Dallas is going to handle them pretty easy, 3-0, 3-1, something like that fashion. I think Seattle's gas kind of runs out after one series when they played a bad team, and I think Dallas is just a much better team, more organized, and to be honest, I don't know if any amount of practice is going to fix Seattle right now. I think the team might just kind of be chalked. I think relationships are probably kind of screwed up on that team, considering they're a bunch of veterans who are used to winning and have struggled to win anything, even really series this year. So I think the chemistry on that team could just be chalked, and I think they're going to get handled by Dallas, and Dallas is going to move out of this bracket, knocking Seattle down to play OGLA. Like I said, I think Seattle needs a big weekend, but I don't think that comes here. I think as long as Dashi's in for OGLA instead of Chino, which I still, I guess I don't know about that, I think that OGLA takes out Seattle Surge here in like a 3-1 fashion. I think maybe Seattle takes the opening hardpoint, and then OGLA wipes them in the search and takes the next 2 maps after that. I think they win like a 3-1 fashion, and I think OGLA gets out of that group. I think that it would be pretty easy to pick Dallas Empire and OGLA if this were on LAN. I think I'd have absolutely zero problem. So the only thing that's giving me a little hesitation is the online nature of the league, but I would have to say the best teams in this group are clearly Dallas Empire and OGLA for me, so I'm going to predict them both to get out. So then in the Group A, which is a really, really, really tough group for me, because, I mean, clearly Huntsmen and FaZe are the favorites to get out of here. They're arguably the top 2 teams in the league, although Huntsmen have looked a little shaky, and we haven't seen FaZe in a while. They're clearly the top 2 teams in the league. At least FaZe is for sure, I think, still number 1. Otherwise, you could consider Huntsmen and Empire fighting for 2 and 3, but they're 2 of the top 3 teams. And then London is a team that, you know, from my power rankings, I've always been really high on, but it feels like we haven't seen them play a series in, like, it's got to be over a month, because I don't think they played at the last LAN event, and then they were going to play at the one that was canceled, and then it was moved online, and they didn't play, and it's just, we haven't seen London in forever, and I've been high on them. I knew they needed to get rid of Rated, and they did for, I believe it's Shawnee, not Nasty, and I think that Shawnee could end up being a crucial pickup for them. Just as a glue guy. I think he fits the team better. I think he might have better chemistry with them. I think overall fits the team better and might just fill in as a better sub flex type of player than Rated was. But unfortunately, they're running into a buzzsaw in the first round of the Atlanta FaZe. And then on the bottom of the bracket, we have the subliners who've looked horrible all year. They make a change to get Mac Melts in for Zero or Happy, whichever one you want to say. And I heard Replays Crowder on the Hardpoints podcast saying how amazing they've looked in scrims. Maybe not amazing is the right word, but they've looked much, much improved in scrims. And they have a bunch of talented players, like I've been saying all along, so I feel like they should have been able to improve at any point, but they just haven't yet. And I would say that the subliners would probably be able to get out of the group if they were swapped out for like LA Gorillas in the group B, but once again, they're probably the worst team in a group of three extremely talented teams, so it's going to be tough for them too. But the easy prediction is FaZe Huntsmen, but I could see Royal Ravens and subliners pulling off the upset somehow. So this group's a little bit harder to predict, but we'll get into the first matchup now. The Royal Ravens versus FaZe. Like I said, I'm extremely high on the Royal Ravens, and when I was kind of prepping for this podcast, I really wanted to pick London because I think they're a really good team and I'm really high on them, but it's very hard for me to pick against FaZe. I think they're the best team in the game, and I don't think they're a team that gets hurt by online a lot because I think they have a lot of players that are known to be good online. And I think they're still the best team until proven otherwise. If they end up getting beat this weekend by somebody, maybe we can start having the conversation. Like if the Huntsmen were to take them out and win this tournament, then maybe we can have the conversation that the Huntsmen are better. But for now, I've got to stick with FaZe. But I think it's going to be a really close match. I think it might be like a 2-0 lead for the Royal Ravens, and then FaZe reverse sweeps them or something. I think it's going to be like a 3-2 FaZe, and I would not be shocked if London wins, because knowing the way that Chicago and Atlanta have avoided each other in every tournament, one of them will somehow lose their first series, so we don't get to see them play, and then they'll get like double knocked out or something, and we'll still, even though all they both have to do is win or both lose and they get to play each other, they'll somehow probably avoid each other. But I'm not going to make my prediction based on that. Even though I really want to pick London, I'm going to go with the safe pick and say FaZe 3-2. So then the second matchup, like I've already touched on a little bit, is New York versus Chicago. Once again, I really want to pick New York here because of the crazy improvements we've heard from them and the struggles we've seen from Chicago. But I think Chicago will probably roll switch Formal back to the AR and Arcides to the flex. I think Chicago will handle this one in like a 3-1 fashion, but I think New York will look much improved. And then that brings us to knockout match 1. That'd be the subliners versus London Royal Ravens, which I think is really disappointing that that's a knockout match 1, because I would much rather see London and, I mean, if I had my choice of who I'd want to watch, I'd just wish Group A would be the semifinals, just because I kind of think we know what we have in Dallas. Although I guess OGLA, we don't know what we have in them, so it might be kind of fun to see them in the semis. But I'd love to see New York and London both in the semis. I don't think it's going to happen. And in this match, I think London wins in the 3-2 fashion, which is really disappointing because I think New York is going to look much improved, but they're going to lose 2 series back-to-back, get knocked out of the tournament without gaining any points, I think, which is going to look really unfortunate for them. I mean, they're not going to gain any points in the standings because of just the horrible draw that they were giving them. And I mean, they could end up losing to Chicago in the first match, and then let's say FaZe gets upset, they'd play Chicago FaZe, and if they get knocked out 3-2 in both fashions, that'd probably be an improvement for them. But since they're playing the 2 best teams in the league, possibly, they're not gonna, on paper, it's not gonna look like they improved. So I'm gonna say that subliners are getting taken out by Royal Ravens 3-2, but once again, I have zero confidence in my picks for this Group A. I can see any of the 4 teams making it out due to the online nature, and also due to the fact that we haven't seen New York or London play in a long time, and both are reportedly very improved. But I will say London takes out New York here 3-2, moving on, and knocking New York out of the tournament, unfortunately. And then in the qualifier match, we have the match we've all been waiting for some reason. Like I've said like 10 times already, I just don't think it's going to happen. Something weird is going to happen like it always does with like the Hex Optics teams, where the matchup you expect them to get into, they're going to somehow blow it, or the other team's going to blow it, and it's not going to happen. But the matchup I do have predicted here is FaZe versus Huntsmen. I kind of am a Huntsmen fan a bit, but I'm going with FaZe in this one. Until Huntsmen show some improvement over mean, the last LAN tournament and now the last online tournament, they've been knocked out in the semifinals both times by Florida. They've looked a little shaky as to their start for the year, where they looked red hot in Minnesota and then at the first tournament. But I'm going to say FaZe is going to take this 3-1. I would give Chicago 2 maps, but I think they're going to come out a little cold in this one. And then I think the FaZe is going to come out hot like they always do. They're just the better team right now, I think. They'll win it 3-1, although I wouldn't be shocked if it was like a 3-2. But I do think that FaZe will win this one. Then going to the knockout match 2 in this group, it is London, Chicago, another unfortunate matchup because I think both teams are good enough to make a semifinal or a final. But I'm going to go with Chicago in this one just for the simple fact that it's more who I want to see in the semis, because I think the storylines of Optic, Dallas, FaZe, and Chicago in a semifinal is absolutely fantastic. They're probably arguably the 4 most popular teams in the league, with Dallas having the storied veterans, Chicago obviously being the most popular, FaZe being a historic brand, and then Optic maybe not as popular anymore, but another historic brand, if you want to consider it that, in Call of Duty. And then Chicago's going to beat London here. I think it'll be a really close series, 3-2, and I would absolutely not be shocked at all if London was to take them out 3-0, 3-1, 3-2, anything. I would not be shocked by any result in this series. 3-0, I guess, on either side would kind of surprise me because I think both teams are good and deserve some respect. But if London wins, I wouldn't be shocked. But I'm going to pick Chicago to win at 3-1, 3-2, something close. So that leaves our semifinal teams as Atlanta, Chicago, OG, LA, and Dallas, which is probably what most people are predicting. Once again, I feel this is the least confident I felt in my picks, and I've been pretty much right on most of my picks this year. I've obviously gotten some wrong, but I bet you I've been over 75% on my series picks. But I feel no confidence in this. I could very easily see London and New York and Seattle, those 3 teams, making it out somehow. So my semifinal could be completely wrong. But if it does shake out the way I have predicted, that would pit Atlanta FaZe versus OGLA in the semis, and then Chicago versus Dallas in the other semi matchup, which is, that's a great matchup. FaZe Optic, an always storied rivalry. I think if they play each other, unfortunately, I want to see Optic make it to a final because I like a lot of the players in that team, but I think FaZe is going to handle them. The last time they played, I think they played at the last LAN tournament, if I remember right, and OGLA kind of threw the series, if I remember right. I think they had a lot of close maps that they should have been able to win, but just weren't able to pull them out. I think that's going to be the case again here. I think there's going to be a lot of close maps, and I think FaZe is going to win at 3-2. I think it's going to be a lot closer than a lot of people expect because FaZe is, right now you have to say they're a better team than Optic, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than people expect. But FaZe will take them out in like a 3-2 fashion, advancing to the finals. And the other one, we've got the biggest rivalry in the CDL, the matchup that everybody is hoping for this weekend in the semis, Dallas versus Chicago. If you've heard any of my predictions or my power rankings, I think you know where I'm going to go with this one. I'm not a huge fan of Dallas. Something about their team, although I know they are probably the best connection team online, and they have a lot of great players. They're obviously a top 3 great team. For something about them, I just feel like whenever they play the top teams, they just can't get it done. I don't know. They beat Minnesota's the best team that they've beat. They haven't been able to beat Chicago. I don't think they've played FaZe yet, I can't remember, but they don't seem to be able to beat the top teams. Even Minnesota, they struggled with them a little bit, allowing them to push it to a game 5. But they seem to struggle with those top teams, so I'm going to say Chicago wins this. I think it's going to be in a 3-1 fashion, simply because I think this will get Chicago's swagger kind of back with them. I think they're going to struggle a little bit early in the weekend with some closer series, having to play at New York and London. But I think this will kind of give them some more swagger back, being able to beat their rival, maybe in especially if they can do it in like a 3-0 fashion or a 3-1 fashion, and they blow them out in most of those maps. I think that'll give them kind of some of their pep back in the step, and I think they're going to look better in this matchup, kind of more motivated, more fire behind them to get to a final, and knowing that FaZe is waiting there for them. If FaZe is already in the final at that point, or even if FaZe is in the semis, they know FaZe is probably waiting for them. So that's going to give them a little bit of motivation to try to beat them and get their revenge from losing earlier in the weekend. And I think they'll take out Dallas 3-1. So then the final would be what everybody is expecting, what everybody wants, meaning it probably won't happen. It'll be FaZe Chicago. And I think FaZe is going to beat Chicago for the second time this weekend, establishing themselves as the best team in the game. This time I think it'll be in a 3-2 fashion. I think it's going to be a really, really, really great final. And I think FaZe will take out Chicago 3-2. I think that the sub play of a BZ and Simp is going to be a little bit too much for Chicago, even though Envoy's been an absolute beast, and Scump has actually been very good this year too. I think those two, I think Scump and Envoy will be able to hang with them, but I don't know, something about FaZe's chemistry and the way they play together, and Chicago's chemistry is kind of a little off right now with Arcides and Gunless maybe not being the happiest they've been. Formal's connection with the team a little bit off since he is in LA, and I know his connection I think struggled a little bit during the last tournament. So I think FaZe gets the best of Chicago, establishing themselves as the best team in the CDL, firmly cementing Chicago then at number 2 with Dallas at number 3, and I think we'll see Atlanta cement themselves in Chicago in the 2 spot, kind of furthering the storylines that Atlanta's the big dog with Chicago kind of lurking in that 2, and hopefully it sets us up for more finals between the 2 later. Maybe even like the COD Champs final would be amazing between those 2 teams, and then hopefully maybe Atlanta gets a win this weekend, then maybe Chicago gets a win over them later in the year to put them both at 2 wins, and then maybe they'll play at Champs for the 3rd win and the kind of the crown of the best team in Modern Warfare. That's going to do it for the predictions. I have Atlanta winning this one. I'm not that confident in that because, like I said, I could see the groups going anyway. Online's a little flukier, and a couple of the teams we haven't seen, like New York and London, we haven't seen them in forever, so we don't really know what their improvements are, and they both have roster changes. And they are going to come out with nothing to lose. I mean, they're expected to lose their matchup. Each of them are playing FaZe and Huntsmen, so they're expected to lose their matchups against the top 2 teams in the game. They have nothing to lose, coming out with a fire. They're playing from the comfort of their own homes. Maybe that makes some players better. They have roster changes. Everything's new about them, and they've been able to scout Atlanta and Chicago for a while now with the same rosters. Next episode is going to be a little longer because it's going to be the reaction episode to the results. Hopefully all my predictions were right. I'm sure they won't be. But the next episode will be longer. Reviewing what happened, maybe going over some new rumors or roster changes. That's going to be it for this one. Tune into the next episode for, like I said, for the reactions to the CDL Chicago homestand. Hopefully it's a good one. Hopefully the broadcast gets a little better. I didn't think it was horrible last week. Obviously there was a lot of technical glitches that they tried to control for but just weren't able to due to the nature that they had never done it before. So hopefully they get those fixed up, and we have a great weekend of COD to watch. So I will see you guys in the next episode.